This video is going along with Chapter 18, Section 2, dealing with assessment rates, assessed value, and property taxes. The nice thing about this particular section is the math is pretty straightforward. So in the examples in the textbook, they are listing the fair market value, the assessment rate, the assessed value, which is determined by multiplying the fair market value times the assessment rate. So let's show you that. Okay, and it's 90%, so that's times 0.9. So they get the assessed value. And then they multiply that by the property tax rate. So we'll change that to a decimal. And they get the property taxes due. Okay, pretty straightforward math here. So in example number 2, the rate is done per $100 of valuation. So how do they determine that? So we started off with 95,500. The assessment rate is 75, so times it by 0.75. So we have the assessed value. So it's per 100, so let's determine how many hundreds we have in 71,625. So we can move the decimal over to, or on the calculator, simply divide by 100. So that's how many hundreds were in the assessed value. And then we're going to multiply that then by the property tax rate of $1.80. Okay. In the third example, the property tax rate is per 1,000. The assessment rate is 100%, so the assessed value is the entire fair market value. So, and that's per 1,000, so let's either move the decimal over 3 spots or divide by 1,000. And we're going to multiply that by 1725 per. Okay. So that's how we're getting these numbers. Now, mil is one of those terms, remember, it's per 1,000. It kind of throws you a little bit. So basically, this and this is the same, but they write it in a slightly different way. So we started out with 194,460. And the rate gave us the assessed value. Okay, we're going to divide by 1,000 times the property tax rate of 35.5. Okay, pretty straightforward. Okay, let's do one more that we have to list the assessed value. So remember how we're doing that is we're taking the fair market value, timesing it by the assessment rate. So in this case we have 54,600, and it's 30%. So the assessed value then on number 8, okay, and it's 45.5 mils, and that's per 1,000. So let's divide that by 1,000. Okay, and now we're going to multiply it by the rate. I wish I had a property tax bill like that. Okay, so let's drop down here to where they're determining how much they're going to need. So in your example for the middle section there, number 13, they have Bay Harbor. The total assessed property valuation is $850 million. They need taxes of $39,450,000. So whenever you're determining a percent, which is what they're asking for, it's part divided by the whole. So in this particular example, we have 39,450 divided by the whole, and move that over to spots to get a percent right. And they said to round up, so that's why they went to the 41 then became the 5, because the government's always going to want those extra couple of pennies. Okay, and percents always go over 100, so this as a percent is per 100 is basically the same thing. We didn't need to change anything with the dollar sign added. Okay, so percent and per 100 is exactly the same numbers. We don't have to do anything to it. And then per 1,000, we're just going to multiply that number by 10. Going to move the decimal over 1. Okay, because you times this by 10, top, times it by the bottom. Same rules. So that becomes $46.50 per 1,000, which is the same as $4.65 per 100. And then remember, mils is per 1,000. So it is exactly the same number, just minus the dollar sign, because this is a rate. This is an amount per 1,000. That's why it's the dollar sign here. When they have the per 100, per 1,000, you have to have the dollar sign when they're asking a percent. Obviously, you need a percent sign. And mils is just a number, because it's a rate. Okay, so let's do one of those. Here's 14. Morningside has 32,300,000 required taxes, and we're going to divide that by 657 million. Okay, so we're going to move that over 2. So we're going to get 4.9, and they're always going to round us up. So 4.92%. Okay, and since we have that number already, all we have to do then is change it to a dollar sign, because it's per 100, percents are over 100. So 492 with the dollar sign. When we change per 100 to per 1,000, we simply multiply by 10. So that's going to become 49.20 per 1,000. And then this is exactly the same number as a rate, 49.2. Okay? So it's just part over the whole. Any type of percent is going to be part of the whole. So the required taxes are going to be the parts. They're going to be on top. The total valuation, so that's going to be the whole. Whenever they have total, that's one of those word clues. Okay, so it's just top divided by the bottom, and then manipulate our numbers as needed. All right, let's do one story problem. Number 18 was the next one, where we had Chuck Wells purchase a condominium with a market value of $125,000. The assessment rate is 70%, and the tax rate is 19.44 mils or per 1,000. So what is the value of the condo? So let me kind of scoot that over here. So we have 125,000, and the assessment rate was 70%. So I'm going to multiply that by 0.7. So then our assessed value then is going to be 87,500. Okay. So that one's pretty straightforward. Now they want to know what the property taxes is. Okay, so the rate then is 19.44 per 1,000. So how many thousand in this number? Well, you can move it over 3 spots, or just simply divide by 1,000. Okay, so your calculator's all set up, and we're going to multiply that by the rate. Okay, and that's how we do those. So pretty straightforward. Just make sure you have your setup. Remember what mils mean. That's per 1,000. And I think you'll be just fine. Have fun with these.